Hi everyone, this is David Eddy. I just wanted to introduce the next section of the learning materials to you, where the focus is going to be on the organisation and structure of reflective writing, which is obviously going to be important in terms of you evidencing aspects of your CPD. Okay, so one of the ways in which you can, if you like, turn unstructured reflection into writing is to use things like reflective diaries, learning journals, that kind of thing as well. And people do find them useful and they do find them helpful to be able to document and record things like that. So quite often they're quite cathartic in terms of, if you've had a traumatic experience, actually trying to capture some of that and write it down is often therapeutic and is an important part of the process. But the key thing is you really need to try and distill what is the key learning that's been gained from the experience. So just keeping a reflective diary in a learning journal or similar kind of thing may not be quite enough. So you might need to think about ways in which of imposing a little bit more structure on the reflective writing process in order that you gain the maximum from this. So one way to do that is to start and think about using some of the published models or frameworks of reflection, and these are there to specifically help you in terms of the documentation and recording process, because really, there's nothing more intimidating than having a blank page in front of you or a blank PC screen. And models, whilst they're not perfect, they do help scaffold and provide a framework that might help you sort of kickstart your writing. And you can play around with different models, and you could actually adapt them as well. You don't have to stick to them exactly as they are. You could actually adapt them, or even better still, come up with one of your own. Okay, so reflective models are going to be quite important in that context. Now, in the exercise that follows in the workbook, you're going to be introduced to three different models: John's model of structured reflection, Driscoll's what so what now what model, and that's the model that you'll find as a template within PebblePad if you look through Add New and the scaffolded wizards that are there. Amongst the reflective templates is what so what now what, so you could have a look and play at that as well. And there's also Gibbs reflective cycle, which is also very popular. There are other models of reflection that you could go for. You don't have to try and work with any of these. If you've got others that you feel are better suited to you, then by all means feel free to have a look at those. But the exercise that follows within the workbook will help you come to terms with that and give you some practice in terms of your reflective writing. Key thing though is to remember they are just a model, they are just a guide. It just helps give you a framework on which you can hang and develop your reflections. So you're not to take them literally. You can adapt them and change them to suit which particular needs, and if you play around with each one, you'll find one that suits you the best. And it may actually be that what you find is that different models of reflection work in different contexts. So you might choose John's, for example, in one context and it doesn't quite work in another, and you may switch to Gibbs, and that's fine too. There's no right or wrong in this. It's just a question of finding something that's going to help get you underway with reflective writing and begin to help you scaffold and organise it. Once you start reflective writing, these skills are going to enable you to utilise them in a range of contexts. So for example, you can reflect upon things like trends in your career when you're thinking in terms of professional development pathways, ways in which you interact with patients and colleagues, and also ways in which they interact with you. You can reflect on things like how you deal with feedback. That would be a good one to do within the context of this module, where you'll not only be providing feedback to your peers, but you'll be receiving feedback from them as well as from me as a tutor. So how you deal with feedback might be a useful one to look at. You might reflect on how you cope with challenges, change, how to make the best use of your strengths or talents. Also to reflect on what are your areas for development and how are you going to go about tackling those, and obviously put it on your development plan as well. So lots of opportunities for that, and particularly pivotal incidents. These are reflective activities that tend to be very popular in terms of evidencing CPD, and these are actually quite powerful. So there'll be more on pivotal incidents later, but that will be something that would be important to actually look at. Okay, so this is just a brief introduction to the work you're going to do subsequently, but again, if you've got any questions, feel free to post them on the conversation thread in the workspace, and again there's a link to that in the workbook.